In this video, we're going to demonstrate finding and using subject headings in OVID Medline, PubMed, and CINAHL. Let's start with OVID Medline. First, we make sure that the Map Term to Subject Heading box is checked off. Then type in the term that we want to find a subject heading for. From our example, we're going to look for a subject heading for prostate cancer, then hit Search. The next page will show us a list of subject headings that appear frequently on articles that use the term we typed in. In our case, there is only one suggested subject heading, prostatic neoplasms, but sometimes there will be a longer list. If this happens, we can look through the list and choose something that appears to be a synonym for the term we typed in. In other words, a subject heading that means the same thing as our term. When we see a subject heading that looks relevant, check out the scope note by clicking on the blue circle on the right. Scope notes provide information about how the database is using a subject heading. It lets us check to see if it will find articles we want to find. In this case, we can see the definition, tumors or cancer of the prostate, some information about how to use the subject heading, and some other subject headings that people at the database want us to know about so we can consider whether they are relevant. All of the words in all caps are also subject headings that we can consider using. Once we have read the scope note and made a note of any subject headings or other information relevant to our search, we will use the previous link page to go back to the list of subject headings. OVID doesn't always provide a previous page link, but when it does, it's best to use it instead of the browser's back button to avoid error messages. If the scope note indicates that the subject heading we have found is relevant, click on the subject heading itself. Subject headings are arranged in a hierarchy from very broad, like neoplasms, to very specific, like prostatic neoplasms castration resistant. This structure allows us to search for one specific term or a broader term along with all of the narrower terms below it in the hierarchy. In our case, we could choose to search the subject heading prostatic neoplasms on its own, or we could decide that castration-resistant prostate cancer is also relevant to us. If it is relevant, we can explode prostatic neoplasms to search for both terms. To search for our chosen subject headings, we click Continue and then Continue again. Now we have found all of the articles that OVID Medline has identified as being about prostate cancer using the exploded subject heading prostatic neoplasms, without having to think of and search for all of the ways an author might have expressed prostate cancer. Next, let's find and use subject headings for PubMed. PubMed's default search bar is designed for the general public to be able to enter a few words and find some literature without knowing anything about medicine or databases. To do a more precise search, we can use the MESH database to find subject headings and search PubMed with them. To use the MESH database, we click the down arrow beside PubMed, scroll down the list, and choose MESH. Now we enter the term we are looking for a subject heading for and hit Search. Now we will see a list of subject headings. Let's click on a subject heading that we think will work for our search, prostatic neoplasms. On the next screen, we can see how this subject heading is being defined, and if we scroll to the bottom, we can see where it appears in the hierarchy and what is below it in the hierarchy. PubMed automatically explodes subject headings, meaning it automatically also searches for narrower terms below a subject heading in the hierarchy. In this case, prostatic neoplasms castration resistant. If we do not want PubMed to search for the narrower terms, we need to scroll up and check off the box that says, "Do not include MESH terms found below this term in the MESH hierarchy." In this case, we do not need to do that. The narrower term prostatic neoplasms castration resistant is relevant. If we are happy with the definition of the subject heading that we have found, and have looked at the hierarchy to decide whether to tell PubMed not to search for the narrower subject headings, we can search PubMed for prostatic neoplasms by clicking on PubMed under Related Information. Now we have searched PubMed for all of the articles that have been identified as being about prostate cancer. Finally, let's look at how to find and search subject headings in CINAHL. Similar to OVID Medline, CINAHL will look for subject headings for us. First, we make sure the Suggest Subject Terms box is checked off, and type our term prostate cancer into the search box and click Search. All of the words that are links are subject headings that CINAHL is suggesting might be relevant. To decide which ones to consider, we should look for one that is a synonym for the term we searched, prostate cancer. The yellow symbols on the right are where you find the scope notes in CINAHL. Click on the scope note to see the definition CINAHL is using for the subject heading. The scope note for prostatic neoplasms is tumor of the prostate, which is what we are looking for. Next, we click on prostatic neoplasms to see how it is positioned in the hierarchy. Here we can see that prostatic neoplasms castration resistant is narrower than prostatic neoplasms in the hierarchy. If we would like to find articles identified as being about this subject as well as those about prostatic neoplasms, we can check off the Explode box next to our selected term. Once we have chosen a term and decided whether to explode it or not, we can click on Search Database. Now we have found all of the articles in CINAHL that have been identified as being about prostate cancer. In our next videos, we will demonstrate adding keywords to our search, combining subject headings and keywords using Boolean operators, and using filters to focus our results. Thanks for watching!